Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going on a bit of a journey to figure out exactly how artificial intelligence generates text. We're going to strip away all the magic and look at the actual math and logic underneath. We'll be using insights from this really fantastic project called Makemore by Andrej Karpathy, alongside a landmark research paper that literally changed AI forever. Okay, let's dive into this. It's a surprisingly simple question, right? But think about it. This single, fundamental question drives absolutely everything in the AI world today. Whether you're dealing with the basic autocorrect on your smartphone or interacting with the most incredibly advanced chatbots writing code and poetry, it all boils down to predicting the very next piece of the sequence. So, how does a machine that only understands numbers actually pull that off?
All right, Section 1, the language modeling goal. To answer how AI knows what word comes next, let's first define exactly what puzzle we are trying to solve today.
In Andrej Karpathy's project, which is cleverly named makemore because it makes more of whatever you feed it, we start with what's called a character-level language model. Imagine we feed this model a dataset of about 32,000 unique human names. The AI's goal isn't to just copy them. That'd be too easy. It has to learn the hidden statistical structures, like which letters frequently follow which other letters. And it does this so it can invent totally new, totally unique names that sound perfectly human. Think Dantel or Inurit. It reads a sequence of characters, and it predicts the very next character, step by step.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Bigram bottleneck. Let's look at our absolute baseline, the most basic attempt at solving this prediction puzzle. It's called the Bigram model.
Notice how wonderfully simple the logic is to start. In a Bigram model, we just create a giant 27 by 27 grid. That's all 26 letters of the alphabet, plus a special dot character that just tells us where a word starts or ends. Then, we literally just count how many times one character follows another in our dataset. Take the name Emma, for example. The model notes that M follows E once, M follows M once, and A follows M once. We just tally these up across all 32,000 names, normalize those counts into percentages, and boom, we've got ourselves a table of probabilities.
But yeah, there is a fatal flaw here. While the Bigram model is mathematically really simple, it generates terrible, almost completely nonsensical outputs. Why? Because it has severe amnesia. It only looks exactly one character back. If the AI is trying to predict the next letter, and the previous letter is H, it has no clue if that H was at the very beginning of the word, or if it was part of an SH or a CH. It misses the broader context entirely, so you end up with generated names that just look like total gibberish.
Naturally, you might be thinking, well, why don't we just make the counting table bigger? Let's look at 2, 3, or even 4 previous characters instead of just one, right? But that leads us directly into our next roadblock. Section 3, Curse of Dimensionality.
If we try to expand our counting table, the combinations grow exponentially, like out of control. If we look one character back, we have a table with 27 rows, totally manageable. If we look 2 characters back to predict the third, that's 27 times 27, which is 729 rows. Still okay. But what if we try to take just 3 characters of context? The number of combinations absolutely explodes.
We hit nearly 20,000 rows, specifically 19,683 combinations. If you try to map out every single 4 or 5-letter combination, the matrix becomes so astronomically massive that there simply aren't enough names in our dataset to fill in the counts. Most of the rows in the matrix will just be empty zeros. The entire rigid counting method just completely breaks down. Researchers actually call this the curse of dimensionality.
But enter the hero of our story. Back in 2003, Yoshua Bengio and his colleagues published a landmark paper with exactly this title. This paper fundamentally shifted the paradigm in artificial intelligence. Bengio proposed an incredibly elegant way to escape this curse. He basically said, we need to throw away these massive, rigid counting tables completely and use something entirely different. And that gives us Section 4, the neural network solution. Let's see how this builds into our new architecture, the multi-layer Perceptron, or MLP, neural network. There's a really sharp contrast here. The old Bigram approach, it forces the computer to literally memorize exact combinations. It's super rigid. If it hasn't seen the exact sequence before, it just throws its hands up. It has no idea what to do. The neural approach, on the other hand, generalizes concepts. It compresses data into a dynamic, flexible mathematical space. It's actually learning the underlying rules of the sequence, not just rote memorization. To make this work, the neural network uses something called embeddings.
Think of this as a sort of spatial analogy. In Bengio's 2003 paper, instead of maintaining a giant matrix for a vocabulary of 17,000 words, they magically compressed each word into a tiny, dense, 30-dimensional feature space. Basically, every character or every word is represented by a coordinate in this space.
And this is where it gets absolutely brilliant. During training, words or characters that mean similar things or are used in similar ways physically migrate closer to each other in this mathematical space. Cat and dog become neighbors. A and the sit right next to each other. Why is this such a game changer? Well, if the AI has seen the phrase "the dog was running in a room," but has never seen "a dog was running in a room," it can actually transfer its knowledge. Because A and the are nearby in the embedding space, the AI can generalize and accurately guess the next word, even for a sequence it has literally never seen before.
So how does the data actually travel through the AI's brain? Let's trace the neural network's chronological forward pass. First, we take our characters and encode them into a mathematical format the computer can read. It's called one-hot encoding, which just turns characters into simple on-off switches. Second, we look up their coordinates in our dynamic embedding table, pulling out their spatial vectors. Third, all of these vectors feed into a hidden layer. This layer multiplies the inputs by a set of learned weights and applies a mathematical squash, a curve called tan, just to keep the numbers manageable. And finally, that squashed data moves to an output layer to give us our predictions.
Now, when the data pops out of that final layer, it comes out as something called logits. Logits is really just technical jargon for the raw, unpolished scores from the network. They can be pretty wild numbers, like +50 or -100. Because they aren't percentages, we can't easily read them to understand what character the AI actually thinks is coming next.
To fix those messy logits, we pass them through a mathematical function called softmax. You can think of softmax as a beautiful visualizer. It takes all those wild positive and negative numbers, exponentiates them to make them all positive, and then neatly normalizes them into clean slices of a pie. Every output now represents a probability, and all the slices sum perfectly to exactly 100%. Now we can clearly see, oh, the AI thinks there's a 60% chance the next letter is A, and only a 5% chance it's Z. Okay, so we've built the architecture, we know how data flows through it to make a prediction, but here's the catch. When you build this network for the very first time, all the weights, all the embedding coordinates, they're initialized completely at random. The AI's guesses are going to be totally wrong, which brings us to our next major question. How do we find the correct weights? How does the model actually get smarter? And that brings us to Section 5, Training the AI Brain. Let's enter the final phase and demystify this training process once and for all.
The absolutely crucial point here is that we need a way to mathematically measure just how terrible our random initial guesses are. We do this using a loss function, specifically one called negative log likelihood. Essentially, we look at the AI's probability guess for the actual correct next letter. If the correct letter was M, and the AI only gave it a 1% probability, the negative log likelihood calculates a very high loss score. High loss is bad. We want that loss to be as close to 0 as possible.
This gives us this incredible, continuous learning loop. Step 1, the model makes a prediction in the forward pass. Step 2, we evaluate that prediction and calculate the loss. Step 3 is where the real magic happens. Backpropagation. The computer essentially runs all the math in reverse, calculating exactly how much every single weight and parameter contributed to that bad loss score. And step 4, we update the weights. We nudge the parameters ever so slightly in a direction that's going to make the loss go down the next time we see that data.
When we fire up the training loop, we can watch this chronological progress happen in real time. At step 1, with a totally untrained blank AI brain, our loss sits high at around 3.76. Actually, scratch that. It's not even guessing. It's just producing random noise. But as we loop through the data over and over, backpropagating and updating, the loss drops down to 2.47, and it just continues downward. Those random coordinates in our embedding space are physically moving, clustering similar letters together, and genuinely learning the statistical rules of human names.
So why does all of this matter to you? What you should really take away from this explainer is that the shift from those simple, rigid bigram counting tables to this flexible neural architecture was an absolute evolutionary leap. By compressing context into embeddings and updating weights via a loss function, researchers bypassed the curse of dimensionality entirely. They unlocked true scalability. The very DNA of the model we just reviewed, that is the exact same foundational DNA that powers today's most advanced AI.
Which leaves us with this final, completely mind-bending thought.
We just looked at a tiny multi-layer perceptron trained on 32,000 names, just trying to predict the next single character. But what happens when you take this exact same underlying philosophy, embeddings, hidden layers, loss functions, backpropagation, and you scale it up? What happens when instead of 3,000 parameters, you have hundreds of billions? And instead of a short list of names, you feed it the entire internet? You no longer just get unique names. You get machines that seem to understand human knowledge itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.